You know, that incredibly specific, quiet kind of exhaustion millions of us go through every single night? Picture this. You're lying in bed, your body is completely drained, literally sinking into the mattress. But your mind? Oh, your mind is sprinting at full speed. Well, in this explainer, we're not just going to talk about overthinking. We're actually going to completely flip how you view your own mind.
Look, we've all been there. It's 2 in the morning, you're this close to falling asleep, and boom, your brain decides, hey, perfect time to dissect that random conversation from 6 hours ago. It's like having 50 browser tabs open all at once, and every single one is blasting audio at full volume. You're replaying every word, analyzing every slight tone shift, and before you know it, you're drafting a dozen practice scenarios for situations that will probably never, ever happen.
And you know it doesn't make sense, right? But you just can't seem to hit the stop button. People love throwing out that classic advice, just stop thinking about it, or hey, just relax. But here is a radical shift for you. Having a mind without an off switch, that's actually proof of intelligence, not a weakness. Seriously, it is a massive indicator of sharp insight and incredibly high emotional intelligence. Okay, let's dive into this, because to really solve a problem, we've got to call it by its actual name. In psychology, we don't just call this overthinking. The clinical term is maladaptive rumination. This is exactly what happens when your mind gets completely stuck, endlessly chewing over the exact same thought patterns. And it really flares up when you're dealing with uncertainty, past events you literally cannot change, or really complex social dynamics.
A lot of well-meaning folks might tell you that you're just being too sensitive, but science completely disagrees. Research out of Yale and the University of Michigan came to a really powerful conclusion. You do not ruminate because you're weak. You do it because your brain has an exceptionally strong ability for pattern recognition. Basically, your nervous system is acting like a high-tech military radar. It's always scanning, always processing, and constantly searching for any hidden meaning just beneath the surface.
Let's peek under the hood at the neuroscience here, because we've got two main players. First up is the prefrontal cortex. Think of this as the CEO of your brain. It's the logical planner. Normally, this CEO hits the brakes to calm down any panic signals. But during an overthinking loop, that CEO gets completely overwhelmed by the amygdala and the default mode network. Those two are the ones flooding your system with endless background chatter and panic signals.
So what's the result? Your brain becomes this incredible machine that's, well, practically eating itself. It is exactly like a Ferrari with a massive V8 engine, but the car is stuck in neutral while your foot is just jammed on the gas pedal. I mean, the engine is roaring, the wheels are spinning, and you are burning through a massive amount of fuel, but you aren't moving forward a single inch. That right there is exactly why overthinking is so physically and profoundly exhausting.
Which brings us to a really fascinating question. If your brain is so incredibly smart, why on earth would it choose to put itself into such a draining, exhausting state? Honestly, it doesn't seem logical at all, does it? But as psychology has uncovered, this draining pattern doesn't just magically appear out of nowhere when you become an adult. Actually, for a vast majority of overthinkers, this habit is deeply rooted in childhood. Overthinking is, at its core, a survival adaptation. If you grew up in an unpredictable environment or maybe faced some harsh criticism, your developing brain learned a highly logical strategy to keep you safe. Anticipate absolutely everything. If you could read a disapproving look ahead of time or predict someone's anger just by the sound of their footsteps, you could protect yourself. Your brain doesn't hate you. It's just trying to protect you, maybe just a little too well.
And this brilliantly illustrates why overthinking splits into two totally different states. On one hand, we have reflective rumination, which is honestly your superpower. That's when you look inward to process emotions, find real solutions, and build empathy. But on the other hand, there's brooding rumination. This one is completely passive. It's drowning in regret and just beating yourself up. The real trap here is that normal, healthy reflection can super smoothly and sneakily slide right downhill into toxic brooding before you even realize what's happening. And man, when you slide into that brooding state, it sends you a really heavy bill. The hidden costs are severe. It absolutely destroys your sleep quality. It causes analysis paralysis, which is where you overanalyze every single risk until you just freeze and can't make a decision to save your life. It fuels social anxiety, making you terrified of being judged. But honestly, the most insidious cost of all is that last point, the illusion of mental progress. This illusion is brilliant, but it is brutal. When you're brooding, your neurons are firing nonstop.
So your mind actively tricks you into thinking, hey, I'm productively solving a really hard problem here. But in reality, you're literally just running on a treadmill. You're burning a ton of energy, you're sweating like crazy, but you aren't moving forward at all. You are just trapped in a loop. So when someone taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, you just need to relax, why does it make you want to scream? Why doesn't that ever work? Well, brace yourself, because here is the massive twist that most people completely miss. Telling an overthinker to just relax is medically and biologically unrealistic, and I'm going to show you why. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the chemical loop that's actually driving your exhaustion. Believe it or not, your overthinking brain is addicted to dopamine. Here's how it works. You perceive an imagined threat. You analyze every possible angle of it. And for the mere act of problem solving, even if the problem is completely fake, your brain rewards you with a dopamine hit. This creates a literal addiction loop that is incredibly similar to mindlessly scrolling on your phone. So as long as you're thinking, your brain feels this false sense of safety and gets a nice little chemical reward, which means trying to use brute force willpower to just order yourself to stop thinking, it's biologically impossible. You literally cannot fight a system with such a strong chemical drive just by wishing it away. We need way better tools for this. That's why the top therapists in the world do not waste their time trying to shut down your thoughts. The actual goal is to change your relationship with those thoughts. To do this, we're going to pull some highly actionable techniques straight from acceptance and commitment therapy and somatic experiencing. All right, our first technique is called cognitive diffusion. I want you to imagine your anxious thoughts as a heavy pair of virtual reality goggles strapped tightly to your face. When they're on, the disaster playing out right in front of your eyes feels 100% real. You are entirely fused with the panic. Cognitive diffusion is the mental act of taking those VR goggles off, holding them in your hands and realizing, oh wait, this is just a video playing. It isn't my actual real life. Here is exactly how you do it, step by step. First, you notice the toxic label, something like, I'm a failure. Second, you deliberately pause to add a little mental space. Third, you reframe the language by adding one crucial phrase, I'm having the thought that I'm a failure. Just by adding I am having the thought that, you physically move blood flow away from your panicked amygdala and push it right back to your logical prefrontal cortex. It's like you step out of a rushing river and just watch the current safely from the shore. But hey, sometimes your mind is racing way too fast for logic to kick in. And that brings us to technique 2, updating the safety signal for your central nervous system. Remember how we said your nervous system is running on old, outdated survival software? Well, you can't logic your way out of a physiological panic. You actually have to use the physical language of the body to retrain it, to prove to it that you are completely safe right here in the present moment. Let's move to and see how this builds into our next tool. We use the 5-4-3-2-1 somatic grounding technique. When that mental loop starts up, you have to abruptly cut the stream using real sensory experiences. Find 5 things you can clearly see, 4 things you can physically reach out and touch, 3 sounds you hear right now, 2 things you smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And if that's not snapping you out of it, go intense. Splash your face with ice cold water or go lift something heavy at the gym. So the crucial point is that your brain's default mode network, yeah, that's the part generating all those fake, exhausting arguments, it simply cannot do 2 things at once. When you force your brain to focus on strong, undeniable physical signals from the real world, it absolutely has to pause the imaginary conversations. You are biologically sending the message, hey, there is no predator chasing us. It is safe to rest now. Which really brings us to the core of everything we've uncovered in this explainer today. Overthinking is not a personality flaw. It really isn't. It's evidence of a mind with extremely high processing power. It is proof of exactly how hard you have worked to survive in a world that at one point felt incredibly unpredictable. Your goal here isn't to kill off your sensitivity. The goal is to become a patient, compassionate guide for your own brilliant mind. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. Think about your own patterns for a second. Do you lean more toward constructive reflection, where you use that brilliant brain to grow? Or do you find yourself constantly pulled into the undertow of negative brooding? Identify your state, take off those VR goggles, and just remember, you finally have the tools to take back the steering wheel. Thanks for watching this explainer. We'll catch you next time.